barring any crazy injury, I give myself 2 years to pursue this racing. If I don't have the contract I need, I'm going all in on my training business. Basically started the ride at 9:30 in the morning. We didn't have cell service, so it was weird because I started it and announced it, and then it was just quiet for 24 hours. People were like refreshing their Strava, and then boom, dude, they saw a ride that was 200 miles and 60,000 feet of climb. I was out on a road ride on a country road, and a car blew a stop sign, estimated 60 miles an hour. Four-way stop, T-boned me, and it was terrible, man. I mean, I really almost died, and I should have died. Even after that, I'm like, all right, what's my move? How do I make this a great story?
All right, man. Legacy Lounge. Sometimes people want to talk.
We have an incredible guest here.
What's up, brother?
The definition of the Legacy Lounge is the stuff that he's putting together. He's a great community leader. His story is amazing.
Episode 44. Welcome to the lounge. We got Derek Teel, Dialed Health. Man, I'm so freaking fired up that you're here.
Appreciate that. And it's really good seeing you wear that Stay Gnarly shirt.
Thank
That
you,
means a
man.
lot. Yeah.
And just a little backstory on how I got this shirt. But I don't know. I'm drawing a blank on your buddy's name, but this came after your accident. And there was some fundraising going on.
Yeah. Russell put those together.
Bingo. Yep. So I snagged one, and I was recently in Oaxaca because my fiance and I are getting married there next year.
Nice.
And I was wearing this Stay Gnarly shirt. So this thing's already been across the states.
It's cool. I don't do merch consistently. It's been a big need I'm trying to fulfill right now.
Yeah.
But it's crazy when shirts get out there where people see them.
Yeah.
You know, people will rock those Stay Gnarly shirts at off-road races like Baja, Mexico. You know, you're in Oaxaca,
Yep.
checking out venues for your wedding. I have people in Europe wearing them, and it's cool because people will send me photos and send them to me on through DMs and just be like, "Hey, you know, I was in
That's
this
awesome.
random place and saw this." And it could be like Beijing, it could be anywhere.
That's awesome.
And it's cool. Russell made those shirts. Like, it was totally not something he even asked me about. He just did it.
Just did it, yeah.
He knew the story behind the shark jaw tattoo on my hand, which is just a reminder to stay gnarly. And so after the accident and everything, that's what he whipped up, and it was awesome, man. They raised a ton of money for me. It was really, really special.
Man.
We're gonna be circling and doing all sorts of circling back and going all over the place in this podcast. But where I would like to start it off selfishly is I just want to know, how did the evolution of you getting involved in cycling, how did that all begin? Because normally when you get this into something, there's somebody that you met at some point that inspired you. So can we start there?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I grew up as an action sports kid, you know, born in the early 90s, and I was full X Games mode my entire childhood. But at the same time, my dad is retired CHP and SWAT team, super physical. I mean, he had me doing push-ups and pull-ups from the time I could, you know. So at one point, I remember he had me on a push-up daily goal, and I'd be at sleepovers at my friend's house, knocking out push-ups in the other room because I was like, I told my dad I'd do 200 push-ups today or something like that.
How old were you when you're talking about right now?
12.
That's
Oh my gosh.
awesome. I'm behind the curve.
You're literally speaking
Yeah.
this guy's language because he's
Really?
got 3 kids and they're like juniors and seniors. Is Kai a junior?
Yeah, Kaiser Jr.
So you're speaking his language right now.
I love
Well,
it.
it's cool too. It's crazy the whole monkey see, monkey do thing because now my gym was moved into my garage for the past 2 years, and it was really cool for my boys to see me training.
Yes.
And they see me stretching every night. Nighttime push-ups is what they call it, is a thing now. We're trying to get them to do 5 push-ups. It's cool. Yeah, it's cool. So I'm excited to kind of continue that legacy, I guess pun intended, that my dad kind of instilled through me. So it was funny because on one hand, I was a full action sports, skateboard, wakeboard, every board sport, BMX bikes, all of that. growing up, but I also really appreciated just being physical. And
Yeah.
I remember too, when I first got a mountain bike, it was basically I got into BMX just as part of this action sports thing. My dad got me a mountain bike and we started digging jumps in the local fields. And I had this strange discipline where even at 13, 14 years old, I would be like, okay, I have to do 100 shovel loads on this jump before I leave. And I would count them. And my friends would leave and I would stay there and I'd keep digging. And so it was this blend of just being physical, some form of discipline, and then sports. And that led me into downhill racing. And I went pretty dang far in it. I got my pro license, started being competitive nationally, got on a team called Yeti Cycles, which is a big mountain bike brand in the States. And at the time, they had 3 levels of teams. I was on the national. And really, the next step was to go up to the World Cup. And it was promising, like to the point where even through high school, my parents said, like, hey, we'll support you if you want to go this direction instead of going to school.
Dang, wow.
Yeah. And so it was very realistic. It wasn't like a pipe dream.
Yeah.
But as I got further into it, I'm hanging out and riding and racing the legitimate pros. It just started feeling off. And I could probably talk your ear off about, at that time, things that were going on. But I started questioning whether or not it was really the lifestyle that I wanted.
Yeah.
And at that same time, I was working with coaches and nutritionists through that team. And it was funny because as my interest in racing started to kind of shake up a little bit, my interest in the training side of it, it really started coming through. So I almost started going further in it, you know? Like I remember a nutritionist telling me I should eat like a tomato and black beans or like just add some variety to my diet. Cause I grew up on like Reese's Puffs and Pop-Tarts.
Yeah.
You know? Like I was always very physical, but I ate like a freaking garbage disposal my entire life. And so it was interesting. It was like this new focus that it was in me, but it was pretty far from what I was doing at the time. And I got to a point where you have to, I mean, you're dang near risking your life going down these mountains.
Oh, yeah.
You're going 25 miles an hour on a dirt trail through a rock cutout that's 6 inches wide. And if you don't make it in there, you're going to clip your pedal and go over the handlebars or fly into a tree or anything. You know, up until this point, the injuries were stacked.
Yeah.
Every year I had at least 1 or 2 broken bones, torn ACLs, that kind of stuff.
Damn.
And so it's one of those things where it's like, if you're not going to do it all the way, you probably shouldn't do it. Like, and at the time, I wasn't just going to do it for fun. I was just so deep into it. So I walked away from it when I was 21. And at that time, I'm just like living at home. My parents are telling me I got to go to school now. I hate that. I'm basically flunking classes at the local community college, just kind of feeling depressed. But the thing I'm really nailing is P90X videos in the garage, dude. Yeah.
You were a massive P90X guy, weren't you?
I did P90X abs this morning, fool. I literally, it's
X,
on
baby.
Pinterest still on my phone. So, I mean, that's what me and the
That's
kids
a hard
do.
ab workout. Can you get it? Can you get all the reps in?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But
It's
that is
tough
hard to work
when you
up
do
to.
the regular workout and you do it at the end. That's when I would die, but I could do it. Like, it's part of my baseline right
You
now.
guys
so.
Love
probably, I'm just telling you, like,
That's
I feel
hilarious.
like selfishly, you're here because of me, Derek. All right, like I'm a cyclist,
Yeah.
like not a really good one, but I'm just saying, like, you know. But I have a feeling like you guys have a lot in
man.
common because this dude's
No
a
question.
savage. Like he's up every day at 4 in. He's an old man. What are you, 45 or 46?
45. Eesh.
45 years old.
Oh,
Got a 6-pack. I mean, this dude's like one of the hardest mental dudes that I've ever met in my entire life.
Love it. I can
Yeah.
feel the energy from both you guys right now. It's good. It's like pumping me up. You
Oh,
and,
man.
And it's funny. So the P90X videos just became this thing where I was like, okay, I don't want to go to school. And I love working out. And this guy dancing around the screen looks like he has a pretty cool job.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I kid you not, that's what made me be like, I should be a personal trainer. And I never really went to gyms though. I always
Yeah.
worked out at home. And so I set a goal to get my personal training license and just called all the gyms around the state and decided what certification I was going to do and how I would basically become a personal trainer.
Yeah.
And through that process, I fully dove into it, walked away from riding and really didn't have intentional on going back.
Mm.
And I was still riding my bikes like here and there because it was still fun.
Yeah.
But it's just hard, dude. When you're that close to doing something professionally, to still kind of dabble in it is tough. And I've seen a lot of friends struggle with this, where they're trying to move on from this thing, and it's just, you have to get some space sometimes. So that's definitely what I did. And I just started working at, well, you guys would know. I don't know if all the audience would, but California Family Fitness.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
This is like the most personal trainer, wears a polo, tucks it in. The GM's walking around telling the fitness manager to tell you to sell this extra thing every other day. So it was really interesting because I started doing a job that was cool because it wasn't minimum wage. You know, I was delivering pizzas and stuff before that and all sorts of things. And so I was like, okay, that's cool. I like the environment. I'm actually hands-on helping people, but also I can't do my job unless I sell. So sales became this thing that I felt like I started to need to conquer.
Yeah.
And I worked my way up to doing it part-time, basically started chasing my now wife around the state. She goes down to LA. So I'm like, oh, I could be a trainer at Equinox in Santa Monica. So I moved down without a job and like anything and got a job there and started that.
Oh, yeah.
And it was rad because so me and I convinced another trainer to go with me from the gym.
Oh, wow.
So we got IKEA bunk beds and a studio apartment down there.
What part of LA?
It was in Santa Monica.
Great.
Oh man,
Yeah.
you were like in the prime area.
Oh yeah. So that's one thing that's so cool when you're that young.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you guys probably had experiences like this, but it's like, okay, I don't have really anything, but also I just have to keep myself alive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can literally be on this bunk bed, and I have, termites literally shooting out of the floorboards in this apartment, and the washer and dryer doesn't work, and there's like permanent sand in the bathroom. It was bad. I had homeless guys screaming on the gate in front and a bus stop in front.
Yeah.
Like my dad came and saw it, and he literally looked at me. He's like, "Bro, there's nowhere to go but up." That's what he said. He's like, yeah. He's like, the good news is you can only go up from here.
Hilarious.
But at that time, it's like Santa Monica. You step out of that and you look around and you're like, I feel rich.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm in like a rich, beautiful place. I worked in this facility that was top notch and I really took the sales seriously. And within 6 months, I was one of the top producing trainers in that gym. And my roommate was the number one.
Nice.
And what's crazy though is that through that process and the hiring and a lot of self-doubt about my own education, to be honest, I realized I was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually doing better than all these guys with these crazy degrees.
Yeah.
And I think that was the moment I really got hooked on sales as like a potential long-term career. Because I was like, I know I can translate this into something else if I need to. Like this skill set that you require to sell could go through a lot of different industries.
For sure.
And that was cool because it built a confidence in being out on my own, really. And so then basically we're moving back around. I start feeling like I had unfinished business with my racing. And I end up moving back up home because my now wife had moved back up home. And we miss family and we love this area. So
what made you feel like it was unfinished business? Were you you started thinking about it again? Like where'd that come from?
What I think actually happened was in the mountain bike industry, there was a shift at the time, and there was a new style of riding called enduro. And before you had gravity racing, which was really cool, kind of extreme sport. And on the other side, you had the really like European Lycra. Road and cross country, which is everything I do now. But at the time, I didn't think it was cool. And I didn't want to do it. So then enduro comes out and it's still got that action sports mentality, but you have to ride your bike all day. So it had this huge fitness component. It's almost like rally car stage racing. Where there's an big allotted time segment to get to the top of the mountain, but you're only racing down. And you do like 4 or 5 of those, and the total time is your race time. And so it was like a bunch of mini downhill races in a day, and the sport starts blowing up. Well, I got a bike and started riding it, and I was good right away because of all my previous skill. And since the downhill days, all I had been working on was my fitness.
Wow.
And so there was a cycling component that needed to change, but I was fit. I had the skills from the years prior. So I got on the bike and I was like, dang, I feel like I'm good at this. I feel like I walked away from racing with a lot on the table. I also, when I raced, I was a stress case. I didn't handle the pressure of races well, and there was a lot of fear involved, and I just wanted to like I felt like I needed to work through all that.
Did you know that in real time? Like that you were struggling with that stuff, the mental side of it?
I don't think it was until I came back
Gotcha.
and I started facing that again
Yeah.
to where I literally told myself, I'm like, this is not worth it if I'm going to be like this.
Yeah.
And that's so
awesome.
no, it wasn't,
That's
it was
awesome.
I had already made the decision, but it wasn't until I kind of showed up at the first race to where I was like, oh dang, I'm scared now.
Wow. That's
So-
awesome, man.
I moved back home. I'm training, but I'm also working other jobs. I'm like the receptionist at a spa. It's just like I'm booking fluffy bunny facials over the phone for like 60-year-old women. I was not stoked. I'm also trying to marry my now wife.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Well, so I told myself, I was like, all right, with the skill set I have, barring any crazy injury,
Mm-hmm.
I give myself 2 years
Mm-hmm.
to pursue this racing.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't have the contract I need at the end of this 2 years, I'm going all in on my training business.
Yes.
And it was really cool because that 2 years, I resolved a lot of the issues I had around stress and
Nice.
fear and just like the weight of competition.
Yeah.
And I was riding a lot better, a lot more consistent.
Uh-huh.
I was competitive nationally, at least on the West Coast,
Mm-hmm.
but there was no contract.
Yep.
But the good thing was that I was brushing shoulders with our nation's best and some of the best in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to them and they're like, oh, you're a trainer. And I'm like, yeah. And they said, well, I'm trying to do this in the gym or I'm having this problem. And I realized, I was like, these guys don't know what they're doing.
The
in the gym.
top don't know what they're doing, right? That's what you're
Exactly.
saying, right?
Exactly. You're like, dude, this guy is like one of the best dudes in the world and he's freaking
Wow.
winging it. Or he's doing a P90X workout, which again, you know, I love and appreciate.
Yeah.
Same way with CrossFit and all these different
Yeah.
fitness modalities, but they're not a good fit if cycling is your main goal.
Exactly.
They're just not. And so I knew there was this need for it.
Mm.
And at the time, I basically was like, all right, I feel like I have some direction. My training is now up to full time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm about to get married. I'm going all in on the business and I'm just going to let racing go. And I can do it for fun, but this is not going to be
Yep.
the path I go down. Well, what's funny is that I started getting more into the endurance side of the sport
Mhm.
as I got married, focused on the business, because instead of having to drive an hour and a half to the mountains to ride all day, I could do a road ride from home and
Yeah.
just get a lot done in 3 hours.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as I had kids and time became more crunched, I really started to enjoy it for that reason. And it's funny, that's kind of what has shaped Dialed Health into be what it is now. You know, it's all strength training for cyclists. And it's focused more on the endurance side of the sport, even
Mhm.
though I still work with some gravity people, because it's usually the people who know my history.
Yeah, yeah,
They'll
yeah.
come to me because they know that I do know still.
Yep.
But also, you guys understand, for marketing, you have to really find your
sure.
audience. And those two worlds don't connect as well as I thought they might.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've gone all in on endurance, and that's where some of these
Nice.
crazy rides have come up, and really just me using myself as a guinea pig for marketing.
That's crazy.
So the
Yeah.
the racing that you were talking about, is that like kind of cross country bike? That's like not like an endurance cycling bike that you're using. for
So
that?
it's a mountain bike. It's like what you call a normal mountain bike now,
Okay.
trail ride.
Nice.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but the races are long. You know, you would say you had 4 stages, but each stage was only, let's say, 6 minutes long.
Mhm.
But you have to climb to the top. So it's a long day endurance event, but it's not like a steady. There's a lot of
Got it.
stop and go.
Got it.
So the stimulus on your body is different. Like, you need to be fit and you need to be able to go all day, but it's far different than doing a 12-hour ride.
Yeah.
It's almost uncomparable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're now kind of like leading into the evolution of Dialed Health. But,
Yeah.
But at this point, there's no doubt. This is like, was this before social media?
So this
'Cause
was
how old are you?
I'm 33.
Okay, so this was about 10 years ago.
This was it was 2018 was when I started Dialed Health.
Okay.
And at the time, I was subleasing a space from a trainer who owned a gym. And there was like 5 other trainers in the
Mhm.
building, and I'm just slowly building up my clientele.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to the point where I was able to quit my other jobs, like the spa. I was
Yep.
working for my mom. I was doing all sorts of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was full-time there. And then really, what I really missed was the atmosphere of Equinox.
Mhm.
And I'm very affected by my environment.
Yeah.
The whole feng shui, like mindset, like it's so important for me to be visually in a place that inspires me.
Yeah.
And that gym I was in at the time was just not doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I felt the opposite. I felt like it was actually pulling me down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, the thing I loved about Equinox was that you just look around and everything makes you want to aspire to like grow.
Yeah.
And there's definitely bad intentions with that,
Of course.
especially in, freaking LA,
Yeah.
that whole vibe. And I think in the younger days, a lot of that was super appealing, where it's like the glitz and glam and you want all that stuff. And so I just knew, I was like, okay, I want to be in a space that inspires me. There's nothing around. I was like, I think I want to try and do my own studio.
Yeah.
And I think as a trainer, when you're full-time and you have your own clientele, that's kind of the dream,
Yep.
is to have your own training studio.
Yep.
For a lot of people, it was. And so I found a space across town, and I kid you not, in the time I'm starting to set this up, the owner of the gym I was at comes to everybody. He's like, we're done next month. This place is
Wow.
closing.
Wow.
So I find a space that's quadruple my overhead, and it's only 4 miles away, but literally like 60% of my clientele says they won't go that far.
Oh,
And so I quadruple my overhead. I lose more than
dang.
half of my clientele,
Uh-huh.
just got married, and I'm like, whoa, dude, I'm taking a loan from the bank to build this place out.
Mm-hmm.
And I am just in every self-development book, podcast, like hustle
Yes.
culture, Gary
Yes.
V, like getting so fired up to take whatever on that I'm going to have to. And it was awesome. I mean, within, I want to say within a year, I was full-time
Uh-huh.
there again.
Uh-huh.
And by the end of the second year, so this is coming up on 2020,
Mm-hmm.
I was like crushing, like to the point where,
Nice.
so, okay, it was about this time frame. I get the studio set up. This is where I now have the experience from racing. And it's so funny because I'm trying to like line this up.
Yeah, yeah.
perfectly. It's close enough. This is when I was like, oh, there's a need for people. Also, I've already almost capped out my earning potential
Uh-huh.
in this suite. I could slowly raise my rates,
Uh-huh.
but I don't live in a big city.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a lot of wealth in our area, but like I started realizing, I was like, oh my gosh, I realized the clientele I'm gonna have to train if I just want to keep jacking up prices.
Yeah.
What do I do
Yeah.
to keep growing?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, I need to do an online program
For sure.
for these
Pivot.
riders. who
There it
need
is.
So the first one was the off-season enduro program. It was
Mhm.
a PDF, and I got in touch with someone who was helping me with content. And this goes back to your original question about, is social media a thing? Yes. What got me to full-time before this transition were videos that I did on Facebook. And I'm sorry for even jumping back. So I pulled these off of Facebook.
I love this.
Hold on. I got to take a sip before I talk about this.
I love this.
All right. So, all right, whatever. I can talk about it. So, I start doing these videos on Facebook called Trainer Tuesday. And at the time, I had a buddy who was really good at filming and editing. It was the guy who filmed my wedding video. And I started booking him for content.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, all right, let's do like something. I know I need like some kind of grab. And we just somehow settled on doing these skits where we would do like movie remakes. And somehow I would tie it into a fitness lesson, whether that was a workout or nutrition or something. And it was so weird how I would connect it. But we would do like a Footloose thing where I'm like smoking a cigarette behind the gym, like dancing, screaming through it. And then it goes into a workout, or I recreated the Napoleon Dynamite dance, or a Nacho Libre skit.
That's
And what's
incredible.
crazy is that they were really funny and they got attention. And I actually I remember at the time, one of my videos getting 10,000 views on Facebook. And I was like, and I looked at the analytics and I was like, most of it's local. And it was cool
Dang.
because it was actually bringing me customers.
Yeah.
And bringing some awareness that I was a trainer.
Yeah.
But the thing that was weird was that I was becoming the funny guy.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'd like to think I have a personality, but I was like, I'm not the funny guy.
Yeah.
Like, we're really like curating these. And I was realizing that people wouldn't even really watch the fitness part. And I'm like, this is the most important part.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't even know that. They would just remember like the crazy skit.
Yep.
Well, at the same time, I started getting into this cycle of trying to do more and more outlandish things.
Uh-huh.
And it got to the point where it started like compromising my morals a little bit.
The way that you're talking about it right now is as if you're like, that was some really cheesy stuff I was doing.
It was so,
And I really want to
it's-
see the stuff that you put out. That's
Dude.
that made
But
you
you
think
can't,
that.
but you can't discount, like, I just feel especially like where we're at today, like you gotta do something a little different. Like nobody
Yeah.
just wants to sit and listen to some boring stuff. Now I know
Yeah.
we're jumping a little bit ahead, but to give you kudos now, your content is amazing because it's
Thanks,
like
man.
it's just like I know I'm not gonna watch there's snippets, you know what I mean, and you have to evolve. Like that's just kind of how if you're doing something over and over, there is an evolution in the game. You're probably as you're doing these Facebook videos that you're describing, you're doing them like kind of on the fly. Like you're just starting off with this idea, and you're like, I guess we're just gonna like throw it against the wall and see if it'll stick.
Totally.
And it sounds like it was it.
Totally. And it was, dude. And it's cool because even now, like you can't be afraid to do something a little corny every once in a while or laugh at yourself or like you can't take yourself too seriously well, I guess my approach. There's some people that make incredibly serious content and it works really well.
Yeah.
And kudos to them. But yeah, knowing that, okay, it takes a little bit of that to be open to ideas and be like,
Yep.
that's worked for me. But but what I also realized was what you get known for is what you're gonna have to continue doing. And just because you can do it doesn't mean you should.
I
Damn,
like
that
it.
was good right there.
That was great.
Dude, this was
That
a
was
huge
great.
lesson because the video that made me stop doing it that we didn't put out was this crazy like BDSM band. Basically, we filmed it at the gym I was at midnight because I'm like, I don't want anybody to see me doing this. But of course, I'm willing to put it out on the internet, right? That's what's so funny. But also, it was so weird. I knew it was gonna be so weird, and we wanted it to be dark. So we basically took every band in the gym, like every pull-up band, whatever, and we hung it up from the pull-up rig so that I could actually get in the bands and hang upside down. And it was gonna open with my buddy basically like whipping me, right? And I'm like screaming. And how we tied this into a fitness thing, I don't even remember. But I remember as we were doing it, it was like hilarious, but also like weird enough to where we're looking at each other. We're like, dude, why are we doing this? And literally it was because we're trying to one up ourselves.
Yeah.
And we know this is going to get views.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, we did it. And that's all it really was.
Yeah.
It was like, the thing that was funny was in my head, I'm like, okay, this is kind of just like funny.
Yeah.
But also, where does this go next?
Yes.
And that's when I literally was like, this is done. Like, this is done.
Yeah.
I have to find a way because I'm like, I can do this, but I shouldn't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And it was crazy because that was the thing that had got me full time when I was struggling to build my business and make a name for myself as a trainer. And it worked, but I was going to walk away from it. But what I knew was that like I had this thing in my back pocket knowing that content is my way to get clients.
Yep.
So I stopped doing it, and it was crazy of how many people were like, where's the videos? Where's the videos? And I had to almost have this conversation with a lot of people. Well, I make that transition. Thankfully, I had enough word of mouth at the time to where I was able to build up my clientele. And honestly, my studio was so nice.
Yeah.
The workouts were great. The environment was great. There was a lot. It was great.
Good.
So the retention was really high, and it was just a very healthy, great training space, one-on-one, small group. And I also just did everything I could to get the business to where the schedule was great. Like as a trainer, if you start, you need to be willing to do a 5 a.m. session and the same night come back and do an 8:30 p.m. session.
Damn.
And if you don't have that grind, I'm not saying you can't do it, but it's going to take a lot longer to establish yourself. And so the gym gets to that point, and that same videographer I'm still working with, this is when we're like, all right, Instagram's the new big thing right
Yep.
now. And it had already been. I mean,
Yeah.
by this point, it's 2018.
Yeah.
And so Instagram's been around for a while, but it already felt like this kind of hard thing to crack and
Yep.
overcrowded, especially in the fitness industry. And so we made a bet, first one to 10K followers gets a steak dinner, like Ruth's Chris steak dinner, whatever. And so that's what we think about.
That's all. Yeah.
And so that was our bet. And so we start plugging away in content, and I that was my form of marketing. I launched that program as a PDF. The first person who, and I was marketing it through Instagram. The first sale I got just happened to be overnight. And I literally woke up to the sale, and with all the Gary V, all the
That's
stuff in my
awesome.
ears, I was like, I just made money while I slept.
That's sick.
I was
great.
like, whoa.
Yes.
And by the way, that sale was more than I would have made in a full day of work like a year before.
Man. Let's
And that was
go.
like, again, it's these like little
Yeah.
hooks, you know?
Yeah.
That was a sale of somebody buying your program.
Mm-hmm.
Buying the PDF that we had created
Yeah.
for the 4-month program. Training
So that
program.
was, were there videos attached to this program?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Videos made for it. It's literally, if you took one of the programs off of my platform now and mashed it into PDF with links, that's what it was. And I think it was pretty well done for the most part. I've learned so much since building an app from the ground up.
Yeah.
And, trying to give people the product that they want is like a wildly challenging and stressful
Yep.
endeavor. But what's crazy is that by the tail end of all of this, dude, I have a 1-year-old and my wife's pregnant with twins, and we're going into freaking 2020.
Yes.
Crazy. Are
Yes.
you, by the way, like throughout that, so you're pregnant with twins, you have a kid, and you're building this business, are you still actively cycling too?
I'm killing myself training. Killing myself training.
Yeah.
Training cycling?
No.
Or
So hard. Yeah, but everything.
everything?
I'm doing the hardest workouts I can in the gym.
How many hours of sleep were you getting?
Oh, it was so bad. It was so bad that when I had my first kid and everyone's like, oh, I bet the sleep sucks right now. And I'm like, I can't even
There's
tell.
no difference.
Can't even tell.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
But also,
That's gotta be
that was my vibe though at the time.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, sleep when I'm dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
That's changed a lot.
It's
since then.
changed a
But
lot.
yeah, that it was cool because it really did teach me work ethic,
Mhm.
and I knew I had it in me. The thing I've told a lot of people, and it's been a struggle very recently because I've taken it too far.
Mhm.
But I went from being a dreamer to a doer, and it
Mm.
was very hard to get myself from just dreaming and thinking about things to taking action
Yeah.
and doing things. And I got relentless about that.
That's
like
awesome. Yeah.
arrogant,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I have my own podcast.
Yeah.
And dude,
Yeah.
I remember I've said stuff too that is so kind of it's like repelling to think about now because it is so arrogant, but I'm like, it's like it almost takes that sometimes.
It does.
to
You got to psych yourself out. You got to prove to yourself that you can do anything that you put your
Yeah.
head to. So it's kind of a battle. Like, yes, you said it's not like that anymore, but you can't even appreciate the slower times and everything until you've gone to that place and really seen the other side of it. So now you know you can accomplish anything you put your mind to,
Yeah.
but now you can truly appreciate not going balls to the wall at all times, right? I mean, that's part of the process.
I just want to stay
So
on
well
this,
said.
like the unapologetic stuff. Like, I would probably venture to say that you're a little bit of a perfectionist.
Dude, you
Would-
are so right.
Okay.
And
okay.
I have a very close mentor to me, and he
Mm-hmm.
has told me this from day one, and I'm like, no.
So like,
But you're right. He's right.
I feel like that's like a common thing with highly successful people, whether it be like sports, endurance, business. You're just a little crazy. But what I wanted to just kind of get back to on like you like thinking back of when you had your pod and you're like maybe looking back and you said something arrogant. Like I've had those moments in here because like my favorite podcast, my favorite people in the world to listen to and absorb information from are just unapologetic, and they're just going to be vulnerable, and they're just going to say whatever they want to say. But then when you're the one doing it, like it feels a little uncomfortable. You know what I mean? And like I've had those moments with you where I'm like, oh my God, like I just listened to myself. And that's the other thing. Like since we've been on this journey, like the magic for me is when we have guests and we're doing what we do now. But like listening to myself, like I'm my world's biggest critic.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, but I'm on that just to say, like, I'd rather hear something that might be a little cringe or a little, arrogant, but you were vulnerable enough to say it. You know what I mean? You weren't like sugarcoating it.
And it's like the energy sometimes. It's just it's changed recently. This accident I went through has changed me so much, and it's brought me so much closer to God that it seems like I'm catching myself do things at times that I'm like, oh, that is just not Christ-like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Flat out. But when you're not thinking about that, it's like energy.
Yes.
It's like when you're listening to like Lil Wayne.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Like, what was that album? 3P or whatever. Like this, like the most, but it gets you fired up.
Yep.
Like the thing I'm actually thinking about was when I had started my online subscription, which I can tell you very quickly. Basically, I got to the point where I had like 4 separate PDFs on my website, and they're starting to sell.
Yeah.
And I really thought, I was like, if I went to subscription, for one, it's reoccurring monthly income that could be a little bit more stable. And also, it's cheaper for the people buying.
It is.
Because now they're paying less and they're getting access to all my programs.
Yes.
And they have a subscription, but it's literally a better deal for them. I'd prefer this form of income. And that's when I went to a subscription website and put everything behind the paywall. And at that time, I had some competition online. And I blew past the 10,000 followers online, and I'm starting to just get more awareness, and I started having some competition. And I remember there was like some criticism, and it had come up in a podcast, and I remember saying like, well, I wouldn't want to go against me. And like, that was my energy. Like these dudes were trying to check me on stuff, and I'm like, bring it on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's good, but also would I say that now? I wouldn't want to go against me? No. Like what's weird is that now I know, I'm like, there are so many guys that outwork me. How am I going to outwork this dude with no kids and no mortgage and no wife?
Yeah.
He better be working more than me.
Damn.
He better be. And guess what? I'm not. But I could be more focused, and I could definitely be smarter.
That's weird. That's right. That's right.
There's things I'm trying to lean into now and gain confidence from that just weren't the things I could earlier. Because I was the I will outwork you guy.
Yeah.
Which again, I think it served me to an extent. It just went too far.
Yeah.
It went to the point where it was just like self-destructive for sure.
Man, just seeing if you can just talk yourself through it. I love it, man. Man. But let's jump back in. Well, we said we're gonna kind of go in and out on it all.
Well, good.
You talked about it being a little bit over a year from the accident.
Yeah.
Let's let the listeners know what you're referring to. Bring us back to what you've been building through in the accident you're referring to.
Yeah. So it's been 13 months now, but I was out on a road ride and on a country road, and a car blew a stop sign, estimated 60 miles an hour.
Oh, man.
4-way stop, T-boned me, and it was terrible, man. I mean, I really, really almost died, and I should have. I should have died. And I've been recovering for the last year.
Man.
Praise God, I'm healing a lot.
Yeah.
And it's just been the hardest year of my life. And it's crazy because there were hard things that I had dealt with.
Of course.
But I had never actually had any major health struggles. And just in the split second, I thought my life was over and that, my boys were going to be growing up without a father.
Yes.
And that's what should have happened. And so those things, like I was leading into, like, going through COVID, and then now my in-person business is totally crumbling, and I'm going online, and now I'm taking loans to build an app, and I have 3 kids under 2 years old at home. Like, that was a hard moment.
Yes.
But also, when you have your health, it's just work.
Mm-hmm.
That's just all like hard work. And having kids is like one of the greatest things on the
Of
planet.
course.
And so it was a crazy reality check to realize all the things that used to bother me that were just so that just pale in comparison to dealing with a life or death situation or even a permanent health crisis. You know, I tore my colon and thankfully it was able to be repaired, but if it doesn't, you have a colostomy bag for the rest of your
Rest
life.
of your life. Yeah.
You know, in that moment I was hit, I basically, to kind of give you guys a rundown. So I'm on quiet country roads. Like I'm on the roads that the cyclists go to get away from cars.
Yes.
The only problem is drivers who drive out there know it's quiet, and they oftentimes they do drive fast. And I came up to this 4-way stop, and I was just gonna make a left turn. I look left, I see a car coming, and in my head I'm thinking 4-way stop. They're about to start slowing down. I look straight, clear, right, clear, and I check up because I'm turning on a somewhat narrow intersection, but I still roll through the stop sign. And I was very open and honest about this through court. I mean, I went to the sentencing of the kid who hit me, 18 years old.
Oh, it was 18 years old?
Yeah, his
Oh,
mom was sitting behind us. It was very heavy, very heavy.
Damn.
Got to look him in the eye and talk to him.
Whoa.
He asked for my forgiveness for myself and my family. It was crazy.
Whoa.
And so basically, I was clear about the fact that you should never, when you're cycling, and I think really in life in general, you should just never assume a car is going to do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Because that assumption could kill you. Because this kid wasn't, I don't believe, trying to hit me. He's just 18, thinking he had a clear intersection in the middle of the country and just completely flooring it through it. Like, I'm not saying he's not at fault. The real fault was the fact that he left me there to bleed out and die after he got out and looked at me.
Did he stop? He stop at all?
Yeah, got out, looked, got back in.
Oh my god!
And I was
What?
Yeah, yeah. We have eyewitness. It was bad. Basically, I bring it up because now when I go and ride, I've tried to. The whole goal with something like this, the first thing you ask is like, God, why is this happening?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you why. It'd be crazy to think that I'd get to the point where I'm grateful it happened, but I'll tell you, the strength from the experience is starting to fill me up, which feels really good. But I was honest about it because I just want cyclists to know that, you know, they need to ride patiently and you can't just blow through intersections, or you have to be careful because it's not just you out there. And so, and it's easy to always point the finger at cyclists pointing it at cars pointing at cyclists, but it's just like, we all need to pay attention for each other. And so I basically, by the time I looked left again, I knew I was about to get hit. And the craziest reflex I had was just jumping in the air, like as hard as I could. I felt like a cat because I pushed off my handlebars so hard.
Wow.
And
Before impact?
Right before the impact, I just jumped.
That is wild.
And I think that's what saved my life because my leg hit, I believe, around where the car mirror is. And my pelvis is what hit the top corner of the windshield. And I think if I was any lower, it would have just been my spine.
Exactly.
You know? And so basically, I jumped up, and yeah, I think without that jump, I would have probably been dead or paralyzed or something. Because I hit the car. All I remember was just being flung up in the air and cartwheeling. And there was a brief moment of blackout. And then I was on the ground. And I didn't have a head injury, thankfully. But I did break my helmet in multiple places, like all the way through. So I hit my head, but there wasn't any real damage. And I think I blacked out because of the velocity. Like I spun so fast, like, and just cartwheeled. And when I landed, I just remember laying in the road and seeing another big truck driving toward me.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I remember, like, not to cut you off, but yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't really know what happened yet. So my first thought was I need to get out of the road.
Yeah.
And I can't walk. I can't get up.
Oh.
So being on my back, I was closer. I don't even know if I was closer to the left or the right.
Yeah.
I think I was close to the left.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to go to my left for whatever reason. So I rolled over. But when I rolled over, that's when I realized my femur was completely broken because my leg, when I lifted it, it just bent in the middle
my
and
goodness.
the bone like rolled over itself.
Oh my goodness.
And the pain of that movement was so excruciating
Oh.
that I can't describe it. But what was worse was that I'm now crawling on my left side, but I didn't know that I had an open pelvis fracture on my left side.
Gosh.
So now I'm literally dragging my bone across the gravel and losing so much blood. And I just realized I couldn't. Sorry. I just realized I couldn't move. And so I just rolled onto my side and I just started waving my arms to hope that the truck saw me
Yeah.
and stop. And thankfully it did. And then it was just like angels, man. I just had people coming around me, and the first people who came around me was about the time I laid back and I realized I'm like, okay, like there's people here. I'm not
Okay.
gonna get run over.
Yeah, yeah.
Praise God for that, man.
Yeah.
Jeez. 'Cause as you're telling the
Yeah.
story real quick, just to breathe on this, but like, like I was talking to Kendra, that's my fiance, and I'm like, I just started recently getting into doing like events,
Yeah.
and they're fun because like they block the streets off. You get like, you're around hundreds of other cyclists. It's a community. You, like, it's a whole different, it's awesome, right?
It is. Yeah.
But like cycling, unfortunately, it's a dangerous sport. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and as you're telling me this story, like the one place where my mind goes is I rarely go on long cycle rides by myself. I feel like I'm always at least with like one buddy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just to like experience what you just experienced and like how different that was, knowing that you were literally all by yourself. Like you weren't cycling that day with a buddy. You know what I mean? I'm not sure if like
well, I was, and the craziest part about this was that I didn't have my phone with me, and I didn't know that.
Oh.
First ride, I have not brought my phone on probably ever. Probably ever.
Oh my
because of what you're
goodness.
talking about.
I'm
But
like
there's a
jaw
reason
dropped.
behind this. I think this was a God detail. So I'll get to that in a second. Basically, I know I'm not going to get run over. I kind of rolled back to my back. And that's when my hip started to hurt. And I just reached down to touch it, and I just feel something sharp in my palm. And then I brought my palm up to my face, and it was just covered in blood. And then I put it back on it, and I was like, I'm holding my bone in my hand. And what it was my iliac crest and my pelvis.
My goodness.
Completely blew off, and the bottom of it was like kind of a hook. The thing is, though, it's pretty deep in there, you know?
Oh
and
my
so
goodness.
it felt like just felt like I was reaching into my body and holding my bones, which I was. The whole thing blew off, but what was amazing was all the bones stayed in the skin. And so they were able to pull it, like repair it back.
Wow.
Very messy.
Oh my
but
goodness.
I lost 2 pints of blood. There's just like a trail, and it was very scary. So just quick injury breakdown, and then I'll get to the
Yes,
phone
please
thing.
do.
But yeah, broken tibia on my left. So it was all left side of my body. for the most part. Broken tibia, horribly broken femur, all the way through in the middle. Fragments displaced. Open pelvis fracture, like I just described. Torn colon and a collapsed lung on the right side of my body. And the craziest thing about that combination of injuries is just the healing process, because if breaking a femur is like supposed to be one of the most painful things that you can do. But when you just break your femur, all the muscles in your glutes and your hips and everything that moves your leg still work.
Yeah.
But all those muscles couldn't even fire because of the damage to my pelvis.
Oh my goodness.
And then the only way they could repair my colon was by doing an X-lap surgery where they cut your abs open and pull you apart and go in from the front.
Goodness.
So from my chest down, every single muscle was not working. And this is what's crazy is like I'll have people literally ask me why it's taking so long to recover. Like, I broke a femur, and I'm like,
what?
You
Somebody actually said that to you?
You just broke a femur, which is horrible. Because the thing is, like, like I said, I'd broken 7 bones up to that point, torn ACL, rotator cuff, stuff like that. So I'd been through legit injuries.
Yeah.
Really painful stuff. But there is no way I could have even described that level of pain or even thought it was possible without, like, being dead. That pain was so unbelievable. And it lasted for a very long time. And that's what, I mean, I won't jump to the ambulance ride, but basically the significance of the phone is that the 2 people on scene, who I'm going to be seeing pretty soon, they asked to call somebody for me.
How are you going to remember a freaking number?
I did.
You did.
Are you serious? There's no way, bro.
Get this. They come up to me. I'm holding my pelvis in my hand. And she said, "Can I have your phone?" And I said, "Yes." And she couldn't find it. And she grabs her phone and she said, "I can't find your phone. What number? Who do I call?" I said, "Call my wife." And I gave her her number very clearly somehow. And I'm like going into shock. The reason that is so significant is because my wife's at work. She does hair. And she gets this call. And she told me that the thing that gave her enough peace to get to the hospital was that she knew my brain was okay. Because she knew I didn't have my phone.
Number.
And she realized that I was conscious enough to clearly give her the phone number. And if I would have had my phone and she would have dialed my wife, saved contact, she wouldn't have known any of that information.
Oh my.
So she said, she's like, even if his legs are gone, which we didn't know if they would be, one of them, she knew it would be okay because I gave her my number.
Oh my goodness.
Isn't that crazy?
Got absolute chills.
And where?
Oh my God.
So
Yeah.
you took off that day with some buddies?
No, it's just solo.
You solo.
2-hour ride, middle of a Tuesday. And the reason I forgot my phone was I was kind of rushing to get out the door. I did a podcast right before, and then I just left it right on my desk and just rolled out and just.
Because my thing too is cycling is so therapeutic. Obviously, as you know, that's a weird thing to say after hearing that story.
No, it is. That's why I'm still riding.
Yeah. I mean, anyways, all I was going to say is like, I couldn't process leaving my house without my AirPods and my cell phone.
Yeah. Well, I don't ride with music normally. And I actually realize, this is a good step. I always bring my phone because I take content. It's part of my job. And it was 20 minutes before. So I had told her I didn't have my phone. This is not that it matters. I knew I didn't have my phone because I literally at the turnaround point of this 2-hour ride, I reached for it to get content and I tapped my jersey where it normally is, the pocket, center pocket, and I didn't feel it. And I was like, "Oh, you got to be kidding me."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Well, I've got to ride home anyways."
Yeah.
So, it just is what it is.
Yeah.
And so when she asked for my phone, I told her I didn't have it and then gave her the number.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just so you know, I mean, you have to already know this, but like, you are such a freaking local legend in this community.
Thank you.
And
It means a lot.
there's levels to the cyclist. Like, there's like, I consider myself like a fair weather cyclist.
Yeah.
But like, from top to medium to bottom, like, everyone knows Derek Teel.
That's
And
nice. Thank you.
when that all went down, like, you can just feel an entire community that was like devastated. But at the
Thanks.
same time,
Yeah.
it was like the devastation didn't last that long
No.
because we were all super tapped into your stories. And then within, like, I'm telling you, bro. So his business coach, Dino, 55 years old, lives in Roseville, and that's who I cycle with. Like,
Cool.
Dino's my guy. We've done like many centuries together. He's a huge shout out to Dino, because on the way here I'm like, dude, Derek's coming on the pod today. And
he was fired up.
Dino is fired up.
Nice.
Anyways,
Go Dino.
Dino and I were like for weeks, just like whether we were cycling together, like we were like just constantly following you. Like I remember when you were like, as you were recovering, it's like, all right, Derek's home now, and you started getting into like grounding, and I'm like,
Yeah.
damn, I'm like, I don't do that enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now I'm like, I just want you to know, even though I know you probably already know, but I can't emphasize this enough. You already inspired so many people with the crazy shit that you've done.
Thanks, man.
And then the accident was so unfortunate, but like it just like tipped the scale. Because now we get to see like, because I feel like so much of what you do and what you stand for is you've built this thing of like just pushing limits and not having excuses. And, you know, I can like, it's kind of like, you know, I've switched it. I've given props to you, but like, I no longer listen to music when I go to the gym. Because I had a conversation with him.
Yeah,
I'm like, how, there's no possible way that I'm not going to like go to the gym and listen to hip hop.
Yeah.
And Renee's like, how is that benefiting you, bro?
Yeah.
So it's like, now I'm like, all right, it's kind of uncomfortable, but now I'm like, all right, I got David Goggins. I got all these people in, and now like, I'm like 3 weeks into it and I'm like getting hooked. Right. And it's the same with you. It's like, I'm going to go on a 30-mile ride today.
Yeah.
I can see some Derek Teel content. I'm like, man, why am I not doing a 60-mile ride today? You know what I mean? But I just want to give you your
because you got a job. Biking takes a long time.
It does. But yeah, that's just like giving you your flowers, man. Like,
Thank you. Appreciate that.
it was crazy. That's why when you said what you said about whoever made that comment about the recovery, I'm like, I'm convinced that if you weren't, like, if your physical health wasn't in tip-top shape like it was, you know, if you didn't have dialed health, if you didn't have all these things that were a part of your life, who knows what that recovery, like how long it would have taken? I mean, do you think there's some truth to that?
Without a doubt. Every single doctor said that.
Yeah.
Every single one.
Yeah.
And I got back to things sooner than I should have because that was just my mentality with everything, which I have started to change a little bit. But I approached the recovery like I had the double Everest or building the business or those transitions we were talking about earlier. My solution to everything was more discipline, no excuses, be more organized, shut up and do it. And it definitely served me a lot. But I'm at the point where now I am trying to get my knee to bend because it was fixed in a cast for 6 weeks. And I'm watching a whole bike race sitting on the trainer for 2 hours trying to just bend my knee on it and just torturing myself. Or when I first got back to riding, I couldn't bend my knee enough to go around a normal pedal stroke. from the length of a crank, but I bought some kids cranks and I put them on my mountain bike and I went out to the bike path. The whole time though, I'm 3 months out. If I would fall, if I fell on my side, it'd be bad.
What's your wife during this whole thing? Is she like?
She's not. She knew I was gonna do that.
Okay.
She knew I was gonna be like that.
Same thing with your dad and your and like is
No, my dad was just my dad has, I've put him through a couple of very stressful things that I almost feel bad about, the double Everest being probably the biggest one.
That
I mean,
was-
imagine watching your son like drop into the pitch black night knowing he's going down a cliffside road at 50 miles an hour and he's 20 hours into a bike ride.
Yes.
He had to deal with that.
Yes.
He was so scared. And I had little kids, dude. The thing was, I think there's been a couple things like that I've done. He just looks at me. He's like, "Listen, it's like you don't have to do this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have proven whatever you need to prove."
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's funny looking back at that, and I think my kids getting older, and one of my kids just had their first injuries, and just going through that, I'm like, oh man, I definitely aged my dad a little bit in those processes. So I almost feel bad, but I think they know to expect it, and my family just wants to see me enjoy the fruits of my labor and be more satisfied, I think, is what they had really wanted for me, because the injury was just so much turmoil. You know, I basically am doing my best to just tell this story online to the community that's been supporting me. Like you said, the way people came together, and it was so cool from every riding discipline. There was this fundraiser, maybe over 1,000 people, maybe. There's people I raced downhill with. There's people I raced gravel with. There's people from the fitness industry, family, like all these groups of people came and did this huge fundraiser, which was, I've made it a point to talk about it because the one of the worst things about going through an injury like this or a health crisis is the financial burden.
Yeah.
You just want your health back and your life back, and you have these medical bills that make no sense.
Yeah.
And people are confusing, and you don't know what to do. It's a terrible situation. And I was very lucky also to get a great attorney to help me navigate some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And to have a fundraiser to be like, all right, if I really can't do my job anymore, I have a little bit of a buffer, because like I mentioned, I use myself as a guinea pig for all of my content. It's very physical.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so what do I do now? Because it's going to be a long time until I can do a kettlebell swing again, or go for a ride,
Yeah.
or
Seriously.
do a big ride,
Yeah.
let alone impress people with my physical capability.
Yeah.
Which I really was doing. I mean, that's part of the reason, even at the time with my kids were young, I was kind of killing myself with training, was because there was a lot of pride that came from my own physical capability, but it was also marketing.
Yeah. Big
You
time.
know, when
Big
I went
time.
and got a KOM on Strava, it's Dialed Health doing it.
Yeah.
You know, when I go to this race and do this or that, or do some crazy ride and document it, it's all good marketing, because it's showing people that I'm proof that my product works, essentially. And that was a lot of motivation behind it. So to feel like that's all being taken away was just terrifying.
Yeah.
But after 2 days of surgeries, I came out of my drug-induced fog. And I remember when I came to, I had a chest tube going down my throat. Or I had the chest tube coming in my side, and then I had the tube going down my throat.
My mom was just in the hospital in November. She's good now, but
Yeah.
she had a colostomy bag for about 3 months.
Horrible.
But she had that for almost 48 hours, the tube down the throat.
Yeah.
Awful.
That is a terrible feeling. And I'm a little claustrophobic, to be honest. If I have a phobia,
Yeah.
did not help. So I'm laying there, and I remember when I woke up having this thing in my throat, and the first thing I did was I looked at my left toe and I just wiggled it, because I just had to know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was just sticking out. And the only thing that was unbandaged was my toe, was my 2 toes, and I just wiggled them. I was like, God.
Oh, that's so
I was like, oh my gosh.
Because you were so out of it during this 48 hours that you don't recall talking or seeing family or friends or anything.
When the ambulance showed up, I was on the pavement for like 12 minutes. And the lady I really believe saved my life, we still don't know her name.
Oh, really?
What?
Borderline convinced it was an angel.
Oh,
It was an
my
angel regardless,
goodness.
but this lady showed up, off-duty nurse, walks up, gets people out of the way. I just remember seeing her take her sweatshirt off, just stuffs it in my side. Like, I'm talking like the most pressure you could and it's on broken bone, but I was bleeding out.
Yeah.
And so she just stuffs it on my side, and I think she really saved my life from the blood loss, but it was 12 minutes before the ambulance came, 30 minutes of a bumpy ambulance ride to the hospital. I'm just like begging them to give me pain medication, and they just wouldn't because of some reason. And I'm just like staring up the ceiling, just like literally wondering if I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know. And I could just the downside to not having a little bit of a brain injury, just being knocked out or concussed for a while, is just I just felt everything.
Everything.
You just feel everything. So like there's a lot of times where a guy on a dirt bike falls and breaks his femur, but he got knocked out and he kind of wakes up and he's in pain. But like all of that stuff in between is you didn't feel it.
Oh, yeah.
I felt everything. And so that's where a lot of the trauma has come from too, and the PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
And basically I'm in that ambulance ride. I get to the hospital and I'm being wheeled in. And the last thing I remember before being out for multiple days was my wife just coming up to me. And then I talked to the surgeon, and then but they didn't say like, you're good. They said, we're going into surgery. And that was it. And so I woke up in the ICU. It was 2 full days of surgeries, and there was like no recollection of anything in that time frame until I woke up, wiggled my toe, and then I literally just asked for like a pen and paper, and I was just like freaking scribbling. But what I was trying to tell him was to get the tube out of my throat. So I had like multiple attempts, and my mom has the notebook of me scribbling on this thing. And I finally get to the point where I wrote like tube or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's when they pulled the chest tube out. And dude, when you pull it out, the orange vomit, I don't even know what it is that comes out of you. It was orange. Just, you pull it out and you just projectile all this stuff.
Oh my goodness.
And then you like take a breath, and then within probably 30 minutes, the doc comes in, the surgeon, and he just looked. Dude, I held on to this. Like, I'm telling you, the little things God does to just give you what you need to get through. This was something I held on to, was that he just comes in and he looks at me. He's like, I know this sounds crazy, but you're going to be all right.
Wow.
That's just all he says.
That's phenomenal.
Wow.
And I had complications later, like 6 weeks after this, I got an infection in my my hip.
Was that from the wound, the wound vac?
It was the open fracture. This is what led to the wound vacuum, multiple wound
Oh,
vacuums.
I thought that the wound vac
I
was
had left with it.
correct.
No. So I go home. I'm healing, and just the most excruciating pain. I mean, you're trying to poop with a broken femur and a broken pelvis, you know. And I'm on so much antibiotics and drugs. It just, the smells and the pain was, you couldn't look at my leg without me feeling pain. Like when I had to be moved,
Oh man.
how gentle you had to be was just, it's just indescribable.
Oh my
Even with a year in
goodness.
between, it's almost hard to imagine that pain that I was going through. Waking up in the middle of the night to pee, like how excruciating that process was, and just going from laying down to being upright and the blood rushing through my leg.
Oh
like
my
that
goodness.
pain was like, when I was in the ICU, I had a button for morphine, and I could only get it every 15 minutes. Every 15 minutes. Dude.
Yeah.
And dude, 10 minutes would come around and I'm just like,
Dang.
slamming it
Goodness.
for days.
How
And
does your body, by the way, feel right now? Like right now?
right now, I don't feel anything.
Amazing.
When I get up, I'll feel it.
Amazing.
That's what I was like. I was actually thinking. I'm like sitting down. Like first of all, like we should never be sitting down for long periods of time, just in general.
Yeah,
But I-
it's necessary.
Yeah.
Our culture for
Yeah.
sure.
But I was thinking, like, man, with what you just described, I bet
Yeah.
it truly applies to you. Like,
Yeah, I mean, like you said, if I wasn't in the shape I was in, the recovery would have been devastating. I mean, real dude, even just the mental side, like the amount of like specific trauma therapy I've had to do
Mm-hmm.
to just not be like living and making every decision in my life based off of fear
Yeah.
it's just taken so much work. And a lot of the fear came from this infection. So basically I go through this thing, it's been a month, and you know, I'm tracking like my resting heart rate. I'm tracking like
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Before this accident, my resting heart rate is in the mid 30s overnight. After it, for the next month, it's in the mid 70s.
Oh my goodness.
It like more than doubles.
Oh my goodness.
Just my resting heart rate. My HRV, if anyone tracks that, is just
what was your resting heart
a
rate?
ruin. So it's normally in the mid 30s.
It was 7. It was 7.
It was in the 70s for a month after, and I started watching it come down.
Uh-huh.
And then about a month, it kind of started plateauing.
Huh.
And I was like, man, that's weird. And over the next few days, my resting heart rate starts increasing. I start feeling more pain. I'm doing workouts in my garage. Like I'm trying to hang from a bar. My dad would come over and hand me like 15-pound dumbbells, and I'd be on an incline bench just doing as many reps as I could. 'Cause that's
Yeah.
all I could do.
Yeah.
And I would do a workout, and then I would get the shivers after, and I'd be cold, and then I'm in pain, and I'm like, what's going on? Well, I didn't really know because I had so much swelling in my hip to begin with. But after about 2 weeks of basically, I got to one point, I was at dinner, and I was in so much pain and so uncomfortable that I went in my room at like 7 p.m. and just cried, bawled my eyes out. My family's out in the other room. Bawl my eyes out because I don't know why I'm feeling so bad, to the point I just fall asleep. And I woke up 12 hours later, just covered in pus and blood.
Oh my goodness.
Covered. And I'm like, why is my underwear so wet? What is this?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like literally, I have a hole on my hip the size of a penny.
Mm-hmm.
And I put my hand on my hip, and it looks like, you ever like squeeze honey out of a big bottle and the way it kind of gulps out, or like you
Yeah.
have a big jug of
Oh
like
my
water,
goodness.
and then when the air catches it, the way it just kind of gulps
Yeah.
out. When I put my hand on my hip, that's what happened. And it
Oh
was just
my-
pus
Oh my
pouring out of
God.
my hip, blood. I never even talked about this on Instagram because I was like, my account's going to get pulled because this is
Yeah.
so disgusting.
Yeah.
I can show you guys videos of it.
Oh,
I don't even
man.
know if I want to go back there, but I had to go through and put all this stuff in a hidden album because I'd be like looking for a picture of my kid, and I'd see something like this, and,
Yeah.
I would have like a meltdown, you know?
Oh my goodness.
So it's all pretty hidden. But basically, I had this infection, and it had created all these burrows in my hip and like tunnels.
Around what time last year was that?
So this was 6 weeks after it. So it was this time last year, March.
It was March.
Or like late. No, it was early March.
Mm.
Same exact time.
Wow.
So go to the ER. I'm on a drip of antibiotics immediately. They're doing all the things. Well, now it just unlocks this whole process of getting wound vacuums, in-home nurses. And I was already dealing with in-home nurses because, you know, I had so many staples. I had like 80 staples in my body that I had to get out like periodically and stuff.
This is
And-
just
Wild.
crazy.
Yeah, I shared a lot, but like the gnarliest stuff I never talked about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is one of those things. And the thing that messed me up so much about this was because I had never had a complication. The accident I could understand.
Mm-hmm.
And that next month, I started doing a lot of healing, like physically and mentally,
Mhm.
because I'm healing.
Yeah.
But when this happened, now all of a sudden I was like, I'm never going to heal.
Wow.
Like, I'm just going to have more complications.
Yeah. Yeah.
and like what's next?
Yeah.
And that killed me, dude. Mentally,
Wow.
that was like honestly is almost as hard
Wow.
because I just had never dealt with something like that, and it led to me, walking around with my Lululemon. I tried to make it as swaggy as I could. It was little. They don't call them fanny packs now. It's
Yeah.
like chest pack, whatever. And I've got a tube sticking to my body that's pulling out like pus and blood while I'm sitting at church and walking in on a walker. And it's just like people look at you like you're crazy. Like
Yeah.
it's just such a scene. And it's just like all these moments where you're like, oh my gosh, man, before this happened, I'd be embarrassed if I had a pimple on my
Yeah.
face.
Yeah.
And now look at me right now. I'm pale. I lost 10 pounds of muscle just in my left leg. I'm skinny. Like I stink. I have like a bag of pus coming out of me. Like, talk about humble. I don't know if I'm gonna get my job back. Like that was me a year ago.
Wow.
And so that's what's been so interesting. And then even after that, I'm like, all right, what's my move?
Mm-hmm.
How do I make this a great story?
Mm.
So I developed this plan of the ultimate comeback where I come up with this tagline because of the Everest challenges I had done previously. I was like, all right, ICU to Everest. That's my tag. That's my hashtag. I'm going to work on the ICU to Everest story, and I'm going to Everest this year. And I'm not going to just Everest. I'm going to Switzerland, and I'm going to do it on the most epic mountains I can do in the world.
Oh, my goodness.
So I start setting this up. And I'm still I'm doing trainer rides now with a wound vac, which is terrible.
Oh, my goodness.
It's like, it's messing everything up.
Yeah.
But I'm doing it.
This dude's a savage, bro.
And so I basically had set this goal late September. I get to a point where I'm a month out and I'm like, I know for a fact I cannot do this, but I just couldn't stop myself from like trying the process, even though I knew. And the craziest thing about that wound vac, well, that had led to another complication where that finally healed. But because of where I was having all these like wound vacs and having to wear my pant line, it was pushing my skin against two of the screws in my pelvis.
Oh, my goodness.
And it was causing what's called hypergranulated tissue. That's supposed to happen on the outside, but it's caused from friction on a wound, but it happened from the inside. So my skin on the inside turned to jelly, and then it came through the top. And now I had an open wound that didn't close until 2 months ago.
Oh,
See, I'm trying to I'm like trying to stay with you around this timeline.
Yeah.
Were there doctors or family members that were like, "Yo, bro, like,
Yeah.
you need to go. Grounding's okay
Yeah.
outside, but this has got to stop." Was there any conversations like?
Yeah, there was. I just was tunnel vision, man.
I
This
mean,
is where I mean that the good habits I had built to go from a dreamer to a doer were starting to be at my detriment. This is a perfect
Interesting.
example of that.
yeah. By the way, I did listen to, which is leading into right here, and it's truly profound, bro. Like the energy, whatever you want to call it, that I'm getting from you when, like, we could have had you here in the studio, and literally all we talked about is the double Everest, because like that alone, just that topic is just like so fascinating to me, and I've watched
Thanks.
that video multiple times.
Really nice.
And it's just like mind altering, just that. But I'm kind of feeling this energy where you're now giving yourself permission to taper down a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's proper, but leading into the race, I listened to your podcast where you bought a house, went to Disneyland, and you kind of knew that you weren't prepared for that big ride.
Yeah.
So kind of fill us in on that moment leading up to that.
Well, the big ride, to sum it up, was me realizing in advance I couldn't do the whole thing, and I'm like, I'm gonna do some of it. I also want to take my wife to Europe for the first time. there was this combination of me pushing myself, but also kind of trying to make up for lost time. I'm like, I don't want my wife's summer to be ruined, you know? And it's like, she doesn't care.
Yeah.
But I just had all these things in my head.
Yeah.
So we follow through with the trip. I am changing Band-Aids in the bathroom on the airplane because I still have an open wound. And I'm going to do this ride in Europe, which I've never traveled to. And part of the reason the ride was so excruciating was because of the the wound was just
course.
under friction the entire time. And
Yeah.
I was just bleeding out. And I had people say, like, you could have done the whole thing. And I'm like, I actually I don't know. And also, you're talking to someone who has pushed themselves way beyond
Yeah,
what
yeah.
should have
Who-
physically been possible.
I'm
I
so
know.
intrigued to know who these people are.
I know. And so that's the thing, is that you get that feedback and the criticism, and it kind of makes you question too much.
Mm-hmm.
So to sum all of that up, the problem was the first 8 months of this recovery were complete turmoil because I was approaching this like I had approached everything in my life.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I was not giving myself permission to let go of my own timeline. I had a death grip on it. I created this story. It had to be like this. This is the only chance I have at getting back to who I was. Because I don't want any of this to go away. I'm doing good.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to be back to where I was. And this is how I do it. And just God said no.
Mm.
He just said no. And he said, this is what you're learning right now. Like, you have to let go. And after I did that, I came back from that trip. I realized I was like, that was stupid. Stupid. And I took the family to Disneyland. That happened to be one of the best vacations of my entire life.
Love it.
Which is hilarious because I think it was the ultimate unplug. And I backed off a lot. I got a cycling coach, this guy I had on my podcast who I really loved his coaching philosophy. And I just started listening to the people. I have so many wise people in my
Yeah.
life, and I actually started listening to them. And
Good
it
for
made
you,
all the
man.
difference because that's when I let go of that timeline that I created that was not God's. I stabilized, and then I started to make progress, and that progress has continued till today. And what's so crazy is that when I got out of that turmoil, not only did a lot of peace come along with it, but it started becoming glaringly obvious things I actually wasn't doing good before the accident. I thought I was killing it,
Yeah.
and I was a ticking time bomb. I was.
Man, self-realization's deep. I want to.
Before we get to that
Yeah.
one, this would be a perfect edit. Why don't you switch that camera out? We're getting to the point.
You should have scheduled this later so I could have it.
Hey, so no joke, by the way, on that two things real quick. For the average cyclist too, like that was actually another takeaway that I got from you. And this can be the simplest of things, but on the Everest,
Yeah.
your training leading up to that, like one of the very small things, but it was big for me, was he was like, and I cut out like the occasional cocktail was cut out. Like
Yeah.
you had to get so hyper focused, dialed for that. And I can't even like stress how much of a difference that makes. Like the last Century ride that I did was the Marin Century.
Yeah.
Which is another reason why I think climbing, how many feet is the Double Everest?
58,000.
58.
Let's just stay there for a second. We have to stay there for a second because do you understand how good I felt after I climbed 7,000 feet? Derek,
Like the confidence.
Derek
the
Teel,
swag.
when I climbed 7,000 feet, bro, I was texting people. Like, I just want to make sure, like, I don't know
Just
if
so
you
you know.
I don't know if you were trying to get a hold of me, but I was busy climbing 7,000 feet. And then I got to see you, but no joke, like leading up to that Century, I didn't drink for like a month.
Nice.
And I was just like pumped. And the difference that shit does is like crazy. When you're getting good sleep, when you cut out, like when you're, I'm sure you can attest to all of that, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I just did dry January.
Mm-hmm.
And I was getting thirsty by the end.
Yeah, I bet.
That's the thing. It's funny. been using myself as I want to lead from the front
Yeah.
with my business.
Mm-hmm.
And I have taken it too far where I'm becoming a perfectionist in every single area of my life. And all of a sudden I can't turn my brain off or relax.
Yeah.
And the alcohol thing's funny because I think taking time off of it is great because it's a drug and it's addictive and it's like one of those things where you got to make sure you have a grip on it. But I also don't have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol.
Yeah.
And it's kind of my only thing.
Yeah.
Like I stay away from all other drugs because I know I'm going to love them. I don't want to start doing it. I don't want another thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to let my gin and tonic be my thing, my old fashioned or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to find some boundaries around it that are more consistent because if I had it my way, I mean, I would train hard and eat clean all day and finish the night with 2 old fashions and a pint of ice cream.
See, I love this guy.
That's
man.
what I would
I
do.
love this guy.
And I'll get into modes like that.
Yeah.
And then I start fluffing up a little bit.
Yep.
And I don't feel as good.
Yep.
And I wake up for a ride and I'm a little hungover. And
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, like it's Wednesday.
I know.
And it's because I had an old fashioned after 8 p.m. What am I doing? I know, so I definitely still deal with that. But I think these like periodic check-ins are still a really good idea.
Yeah,
For
Just
sure.
so you
Especially
know,
if you have a goal. Like part of the reason I didn't drink leading up to that was because with my responsibilities, I knew I couldn't just train 20 hours a week on the bike.
Yeah.
Like you should for something like that. But I was like, okay, if I can't put in that time there, I'm going to make sure the rest of it's as dialed in as it can be.
That's awesome.
That was
man.
part of the motivation.
well, as you were sharing with us the story, I was like, man, we have such a good collection over here.
Great
I'm not
collection.
sure if we should just pour like. I mean, I felt like I needed a little bit of a drink here.
I kind of I feel like I do now. I
Yeah.
feel like I just went to therapy.
Hey man, anything in here. Let's,
So I want to
No,
recap.
it's good. We'll have a follow-up.
let's
Yeah.
do it.
and
Let's do it.
We'll start with a drink.
Perfect.
By the way, I saw on your IG, speaking of cocktails, that you just went to our buddy. Do you know Luke Nolan?
Luke, is he the coffee?
Yes.
Yeah.
Luke?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
'cause
owns
I-
Foursquare and Bloom and
Yeah, and I could have sworn, maybe I'm wrong, but you and your wife went and had a cocktail.
at
House Divided?
House Divided.
Yes.
the speakeasy.
Yes.
Yep, that's his.
That's his.
Dude, I had a chai. This sounds very white. You're just calling me white. I was like, this is the whitest cocktail you can order.
Wait, say you're from Roseville
Yeah,
first,
so-
and then do it. So my name's Derek.
right.
I'm from Roseville.
I'm from Roseville, and after my avocado toast this morning, I had a chai old fashioned, and it was so.
That sounds
freaking-
incredible.
It was just such a slight chai flavor, but that that speakeasy's cool.
It
You
is.
You got to knock and say the password, so it's
Uh-huh.
pretty dope.
Yeah,
Sign
Luke-
on the door.
Luke is great.
So
man.
Luke's another guy that I met at Refuge.
Great
Rep-
dude.
So Isaac, Luke,
Yeah.
Andrew, like a bunch of special dudes go on that fly fishing trip.
Incredible.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And I see Luke because I go to the barber next door to those 2 shops.
yeah.
Oh, cool.
And he pops in, and it's just
Yeah,
awesome,
he's
man.
legit, man. Love it.
You weren't able to take your wife to Lake Como. Did that Italy trip not happen?
Oh, it happened, and it was not that smooth. You know what happened? We do the ride. The night before the ride, I was so stressed about it. I got 1 hour of sleep.
Oof.
1 hour, and it was such a stressful, painful experience. We documented the whole thing. I had my videographer with me. When I saw him at the finish line, I just broke down.
Did you finish the race?
Well, I finished the half version. So it was 95 miles and like 14K of climbing. So I still did that.
Now, just so I'm clear.
So sorry
and
to
for-
double
and-
up your 7K.
No,
there, but
double just that's
was
when he broke down to
excruci-
double yours.
it was excruciating.
But on
It's
a before the accident,
Yeah.
I feel like those numbers, you could have pumped those numbers out like with like ease. Is that correct?
That was a Saturday for sure.
That was a Saturday.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
to stay
Jeez.
Yeah,
bro.
For sure.
insane. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm probably overthinking here, but like climbing's climbing, but there is climbing where the air's thinner, which is more challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Altitude plays a role.
Always.
The altitude isn't that crazy in Switzerland. Like those mountains just pop up from the
Oh, really?
valleys in the water. They're just huge mountains, you know?
Oh,
4,000 or 5,000 feet of just continual climbing.
So
You know, it's different
um,
than the Sierras
yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
So you finish your entire body Everything's bad.
Everything's bad. I'm bleeding. I'm miserable. I'm mentally,
Mhm.
I freaking cracked. I had people coming up to me from Europe that follow my content that like wanted to like say hi, and I almost couldn't even say hi to people.
Wow.
I literally was like, "Get me." The thing was, after the ride, we had to like descend 2,000 feet back into
Yeah.
the ski resort, and I was like, I saw my wife. I cried for like 10 minutes, and I was like, "Get me the f off this mountain." Like,
Oh my goodness.
I overdid it. I officially cracked. So that ends, and guess what? I got to do interviews about it now. And so now I'm back at the hotel, bawling my eyes out on the freaking
Damn.
balcony about it. And this is how it was supposed to end,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so it was miserable. Well, part ways with my videographer, his wife, me and my wife now, guess what? We're going to Lake Como. We only have 2 days, which also everyone told us going to Europe, dude, you're not going long enough.
Yeah.
Here's why. And
Yeah.
I'm like, no, you don't understand. They were totally right.
Yep.
We go to Lake Como. We were going to drive to Lake Como. It starts out by getting an upgraded rental car, hatchback Beamer, dope BMW that we did not pay for, and we got upgraded. So I look at her, I'm like, yo, this is gonna be good.
Yeah.
Right? Driving through Switzerland, get a flat tire on the freeway.
No.
In the Beamer, in the rental, dude. And it's Sunday, and the whole town is closed. And so get this. First off, this is the day after I did that. I feel as bad as I did when I had that infection.
Yeah.
Because I'm just so destroyed, sore. I don't want to walk.
Oh my
And now
goodness.
this car gets a flat tire. So we are in the middle of this random Switzerland town and realize that we're not just going to get another rental that day. And we end up in a tow truck, and I have my $15,000 bike in a bag that I'm rolling through a train station, and I had no idea how to speak the language as far as like
goodness.
mental capacity.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was turning around with that car upgrade. Terrible. So we end up taking a train to the town that had the rental car company in it, which I'm actually slipping on the name. They do the art. Oh, Basel. They do the art festival there.
Okay. Yep.
We're in Basel, whatever. And we get there. Well, there's no cars big enough there that'll take my bike bag too, because I have a lot of gear. There's not like a minivan, Uber, or a truck. There's no trucks, you know? So we have to walk 1.5 miles over cobblestones. I'm pushing this thing up and over these hills to our hotel. It's raining.
Oh
Dude,
my
and I'm looking at
goodness.
lists right now, and it got so ridiculous. And this is full Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, the movie, right? It got so bad that we had to start kind of like laughing about
You have
it.
to.
So we end up getting to the hotel. It's almost 9 p.m. Our whole day we were supposed to be in the Como is burned.
Yeah.
Burned. And we're just like, okay, like we just lost a day on Lake Como. And the place we got in Como was dope.
Yeah.
Right on the water. Our I was gonna say caretaker, the house owner. Dude, she had like cocktails for us when we were there.
Yeah.
It was this beautiful balcony. That whole experience, the day we had there, Aperol spritz.
Man.
But you didn't get there to the next day.
Till the next day.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, after we went through that next day, we realized that we missed a whole day of that. It was so disappointing.
Dang.
Got it.
So then basically we finally get to the hotel after walking from this train station. We're like wet and sweaty. I was so tired that we're checking in at the counter, and there's like glasses of water when you walk into it. Was a night. I can't remember what hotel it was. Pretty nice. The guy checking in next to me, I grabbed his water and drank it.
Oh my, you're
Not on purpose, but I was so checked out that like I just was drinking strangers' water, and I didn't know. And I'm kind of a germaphobe, especially after working in gyms. You know, my kids bring home a sickness every other week.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, I don't want to get sick. I'm just drinking the stranger's water. Dude, that night, I just look at her. I was like, we're going to go down to that bar, and I'm ordering every appetizer on the menu. And I don't know how many cocktails we're about to have, but it's going to be endless. I don't care. I'm done. Like, checked out. And we went down and did that, and it was really fun.
Oh, man.
And then we went to Como, and we came back. But that was the start of, like, making wise decisions, was coming back from that trip.
Yeah.
It just cracked me. Because the thing was, I was like, I pushed too far.
Yeah.
You know? Like, I never went to the point where I couldn't handle it physically or mentally before that, even though I had pushed beyond what was probably possible.
Mhm.
I found it, and I was like, this is not
Man.
the way.
Yeah,
This is
like
not the way.
as you're describing this whole story, bro, I'm like, there's so many signs, but I feel like you kept pushing through those signs because
Yes.
can I just tell you something? I'm going to make this very clear. You're not supposed to get flat tires in Europe. I'm telling you, bro. Like I've been all over
That's what people
Europe.
said. They're like, the highways are so clean.
They're so clean. Like the fact that you got a flat
Good
tire
point, man.
driving in Europe, like
point.
that's such a one-off for that to happen.
I don't know if this makes me feel better or worse. I don't know what you're trying to
Well,
do.
It was a sign. That's what he said.
it's just crazy, man. Like I didn't expect to hear the stories that you've told today. And like if you were just to like watch the Double Everest video and watch your content, you would almost make this false thing of like this dude's just a perfect warrior. You know what I mean? And like you hear these stories and these are very human stories, dude. Like as you're describing the story, in my mind, I'm like, if this is me, all I can wait for is like the silver lining in all of this. And when am I going to get like 2 or 3 cocktails in me
Yeah.
after? And like,
No, I felt that way too. I mean, and what's funny is the silver lining has taken longer to show up than I expected.
Mm-hmm.
Because I came home from that and I still have an open wound and I'm like pretty messed up.
Yeah.
And the thing that was strange about this recovery was how long I actually lost fitness for,
Mm-hmm.
because my body couldn't have even maintained the capability I was at or even close. So the downhill slide just happened for so much longer than I expected. And so I had a lot of work to do, and I had to realize that pushing through pain was like not the answer anymore.
Yeah.
And it was very counterintuitive for me. So I backed off. Like I said, started listening to people, and then all of a sudden it was crazy. The things that hit me from before the accident that I was messing up on. And that's not what I expected. And that's where this, I think, silver lining is starting to come through, and some of the strength is coming back because I am willing to accept the fact that I wasn't doing everything great before,
Mm-hmm.
and that I do need to switch my way of thinking moving forward so that I can actually be better. Like my whole motto this year is do less better.
Oh, I like that.
Because
damn, that is
I like that a lot.
I got that from a friend who, get this, so her and her husband are friends of mine, Dialed Fam members. We stayed with them in Park City. Oh, before Switzerland, I drove my family to Colorado cross country in a car for 2 days. I was driving, listening to Finding Nemo the whole time, and I went and did a 100-mile race in July.
Oh my goodness.
Why did I do that?
Oh my goodness.
It was
you know how bad that was for your body?
so bad. It was so painful, and that's just like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So that's a whole other story. But basically, we stayed with them on the way, and I looked at them, and I was like, should I do the Switzerland ride? And they're like, no.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. I was like, do you think people will think I'm like a failure if I don't do this? And they're like, no.
No.
And then that's where she basically gave me the motto of doing less better, and that's what I've really hung on to because of my solution, which is more.
Yes.
More. What's this problem? I'll fix it with more.
Man.
Or I'm not even going to fix that. I'm just going to do something else over here, and people are going to forget about that.
Yeah.
More. That was like the solution for everything. And so I remember do less better, but I still went to Switzerland and didn't listen to her.
Yeah.
So coming back, I was like, all right, this is my cycle. It's got to change. And in the meantime, I've been very public and vocal about this whole process of coming back.
Mhm.
I'm starting to get a lot of work pressure because I haven't made updates to my product in quite a while.
Okay.
There's all sorts of loose ends I had started with work, and I didn't even know what to start with
Mhm.
from a work perspective. Like I didn't have this clarity on what is that most important thing.
Yeah.
And also, what are my real goals right now?
Yeah.
Because when I built an app from the ground up, got investors, did this whole process, and realized that the long-term vision of that is me becoming a fundraiser for a tech platform.
Yeah. Yeah. Big time.
And at the same time, I'm getting a lot of sponsorships and partnerships and other opportunities for money and all sorts of directions. So the confusion, and then I'm doing this good here and this good here, but people are criticizing everything, and I just felt crazy.
Yeah.
And I'd push myself. It just was like actually turmoil.
For sure.
And so I was like, okay, I need to get to a place where I feel like I have time again,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel very clear on what the most important thing to do is.
Mm-hmm.
And as I got back into work and just kept those two things in mind, I had kept having to stop myself from answering a solution by adding more
Yeah.
or doing this. And this is a problem with being transparent on a podcast, is like I start talking about stuff and I get excited, and then it puts expectations for
Yeah.
people that shouldn't be there. So I stopped podcasting because of that reason. I was like, I have to drop the shovel.
Yeah.
Like, this is part of my shovel right now. And
Mhm.
until I get clear on where the direction I'm going,
Mm-hmm.
I need to really back off. So I started backing off a lot, and it was just crazy to see the reality that although I was having a lot of success, I was constantly stressed out. I was setting such high goals in every area of life. No one on the planet could have accomplished the goals I was starting to set,
Yep.
because you get far enough along in one area of life, it's going to compete with another area that's getting further along.
Exactly.
As well. Like, you can do a lot of things okay, but as you get good at things and try to pursue greatness, there's no way that they're not going to clash,
Yeah.
because that great thing is going to require all of your attention. And I was trying to raise everything at once,
Mhm.
and it was like killing me, to the point where, so the month before my accident, I actually started getting insomnia for the first time.
Mm.
And I didn't know why. I couldn't
Yeah.
fall asleep.
Yeah.
And I'm like supposed to be up early. I'm on a podcast. I have this ride. I have all this stuff, and I'm turning into a zombie because I can't sleep at night. And I'm getting like depressed and miserable. I had no idea why, and it was because of just pure deep anxiety of these expectations and this, like, where this was going, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I love my job and what I do,
Mm-hmm.
but how I do it has to change.
It has to.
I don't want to change what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
I just have to figure out how to do it differently. And I've been on that mission for the last handful of months now, and it's been really tough for me to not just flip the switch and just go full Gary V mode like I
Mhm.
talked about in the beginning. But I'm really, really hopeful about being able to do my best work, do less better, and actually be present in the process.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Why am I taking my kids to karate and I'm stressed out and anxious? Why am I watching the clock? Why don't I feel like I have 10 minutes to do this thing? I do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because I started cramming so much and I started trying to optimize so many things. This is where, like, all these great messages of entrepreneurship and self-development and your physical health and taking care of yourself, biohacking, those are all great things until you get to the point where you don't have 10 minutes to, like, talk to somebody.
Exactly.
Damn.
Exactly.
And then
and-
guess what? It's none of that's worth it either then.
Yeah, and to quote Gary V, since you mentioned his name a couple times, the crazy part about your story is you're still super young, bro. You know what I mean? And so,
Thanks.
like, you said you're 33?
Yeah.
33, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I know it sounds wild because I always joke with you, but like, all three of us sitting here are relatively young. I'm just saying, like,
Well, thank you. I love hearing that. You know, like,
I just think that in listening to your story, you know, you have 3 kids of your own.
Yeah.
I have 2 of I call them my adopted kids. Those are Kendra has 2 daughters.
Yeah.
And if God, I pray, like, I've said this, like, if God doesn't bless us with a child, we might adopt a child. Like, I want to be a father.
Nice.
But in listening to your story, like in like watching Rene do what he does, running 2 businesses and being like just a mogul, but he's an award-winning father. You know what I mean? And like,
Love it.
just the fact that you're healthy, alive, and I think having these realizations are some of the most important things in life. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like being able to be present when you're at your kids' karate practices. Like
Mhm.
these are like the super important things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know why I know you're going to be just fine. Not just fine. I'm talking about thriving. Is just because I could tell that the open and honest talk with yourself is on point. Like you're
Thanks,
very
man.
honest to yourself, and that's where the change happens. Super high driven people, you know, sometimes don't get to that point where they can be honest with themselves of
Mhm.
what's going right, what's going wrong, etc. So you got the groundwork. You've had incredible successes, but I know one of the things, and I've told Chris before, you know, hitting a goal of production that many will never see in their life was something that was on my radar for years and years and years, and then I hit it. It was one of the most unfulfilling success portions of my life, and I proceeded to have 3 or 4 years afterwards where it was hard to even put stuff on paper goal wise and everything like that. Like I
Oh,
was,
wow.
nothing was moving the needle for me. Now I'm assuming we have some similarities with the kids. It's the most special thing ever when they're young, but as they continue to get older and we can have the conversations with them, I know you're going to love every bit of that because of the mindset stuff and everything. But though as they got older is where everything changed, where, you know, my one and only job is to get home safe every day. I was number one. That was never the case when they were young, you know, like it wasn't it. Pushing myself past this to show them what it is, but you know, blew my Achilles and it messed up the whole summer with the kids. I didn't have that passion to go do that again because I didn't want to miss out on that.
Mhm.
And it was so much of just in my own head talking honestly about what is really important. And
Wow.
I already know that I can tell just by how you've been explaining some of this stuff that the best is ahead of you with the recovery of this and the silver lining. You're already seeing kind of the silver lining, but man, your next phase is going to be incredible, man. I
Yeah.
know it.
That that honestly gets me kind of emotional, man. I appreciate that a lot because you do just it's just so easy to second guess yourself. And I think that I've what I feel like right now I'm doing is correcting a lot of bad habits and mistakes that I had. And it feels like a lot's being thrown at me at once at a
Mhm.
time where all I want to do is desperately is just to work hard and be kind of carefree,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I really believe what you just said. And I appreciate you believing that too, because I know I'm on the right track.
Yeah.
But I'm like, it feels like I'm in the weeds right now
Mhm.
because it's exciting to have a clean slate, but there's a lot of responsibility and I have to be strategic about how I move forward and what
Mhm.
that long-term vision looks like. And I think
Mhm.
I'm getting closer to what that is.
Mhm.
And and it's exciting because like I said, I don't want to change what I do. I just want to do it differently.
Yes.
And I know I'm going to be able to. And I'll tell you the ICU to Everest story is not done though.
It's not. It's not.
I'm for sure gonna Everest again. Um, body is coming back. I'm gonna do it. I gotta finish the story. Like I don't. Here's the thing. I know I don't have to.
Of course you
I
don't.
know I don't have to. But what's so cool is that I've realized that there were things I did for for people's perception of me, and there were things that I did for myself. And what's cool is that some of these hard things I've done have really been for myself.
Yeah.
And so when I Everest again, that's for me.
Yeah, for sure.
That's for me. And we're gonna make a story out of it.
And you
know, we
deserve
wanna
it.
tell it.
You deserve it.
Thank you. But yeah, it's totally for me too, you know? So that's what I'm excited about going forward. And yeah, I don't know. It's just been cool kind of like even looking back at this with you guys. So I really appreciate the time you spent on it.
Seriously.
I want to
Yeah.
just before we wrap up, getting close wrapping up, dialed health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, are you still doing personal training, one-on-one sessions? Is it all video, PDF stuff? Like, please give us a snapshot right now
Please
of
do.
Dialed Health.
Okay, so right now, Dialed Health is all online.
Okay.
It is subscription platform, all the strength training and mobility programs you would need as a cyclist. It's through my website and my app. And I just got my studio back, which
Really?
okay,
I saw that.
I gotta give me like 3 minutes
Yeah,
for this story.
For sure.
Okay, so you want to talk about like God teeing things up for you and listening to signs? This is so nuts. I left my studio 2.5 years ago because at the time I was paying rent at home and I'm paying a commercial lease. We have our young kids. We're trying to save. It's the overhead. It's all of that. And we're like, all right, we really want to get a house. And I think my parents had said, hey, listen, you could be paying a sick mortgage and just do this from home.
Yeah.
At that time, I had transitioned from all in-person training to doing a mix of both to all online.
Yep.
And they're like, listen, do you need this whole space? Save, buy a house, and then do whatever you need to after that, right? So we did that. Thankfully, it was awesome.
Yeah.
So walking away from the studio, it was weird because part of me was like, this isn't right. But I also had these like other goals and responsibilities as a father and a husband where I was like, I feel like I need to do this, but there's just something in me that's sitting weird, right?
Yeah.
So move the gym into my garage, renovate my garage, get rid of some equipment. And I'm like, okay, this is not easy. It's not climate controlled.
Yeah.
My kids are walking out asking for a juice, and I'm in the middle of doing a podcast or filming a, program for my website.
Yep.
And like, this is not easy. I got a water heater in the corner. I can't let the light hit or the camera hit. And so then I have the accident. But guess what? Now I have this gym I just sat in my gym all day and moved my arms and grabbed bands. So for recovery, it was like a godsend.
Oh, wow.
And then we move last year and we get in this house. It's bigger. There's more space. I'm like, oh, dude, I have an office now.
Yeah.
Like, no one's going to interrupt
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
No.
Kids.
My kids know how to open doors.
Exactly.
And they scream so loud that they're running up and down the hallway. I'm like, I feel like this got worse somehow. So I start calling the commercial real estate guys I know that I've worked with in the past. I was like, listen, I need 150 square feet and a window.
Oh, wow.
That's it.
That's crazy.
I was like, get me out of my house because your boy's trying to get back to work and I can't focus.
Yeah.
This is bad. And at that same time is all those conversations I was having with myself about like, what am I doing? What's important? Like trying to get back into it, right?
Yeah.
Well, I called the guy who owned my space that I'm in now and previously, and I call him. I was like, listen, this is what I need. And he just starts laughing. And dude, he's so successful, 70 years old, just slow, just like, you know, that pace where he's like, he's like, you're in the thick of it, bro. And he's just like laughing because he is like in Maui for 2 weeks, you know? And he's just like laughing. And I'm like, what? And he's like, dude, guess who's trying to get out of their lease right now?
No
He's like,
way.
the lady that turned your training space into a yoga studio.
That's
I was like,
wild.
this, my space. He's like, yeah. And I looked up on Google Maps and it still said Dialed Health.
Oh my God.
And I look at him and I'm like, he's like, listen, she needs to get out. I need to get paid because there may or may not have been some checks that weren't going through. She needs an out. And you need a spot. He's like, I'll cut you a deal. I know it's more than you're looking for, but we could all be happy.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, no freaking way.
So that's where you're at now. You got keys to it, like how, like recently?
So this was in like October of last year.
Uh-huh.
I call him back like 2 days later. I was like, bro, I'm in.
Yeah.
Move into the space. I'm like, what the heck? Also, I realized too that, you know, when you really cut through everything I'm doing, what has separated me is the fact that I have 10 plus years of personal training experience in the general fitness industry, and I have all of this on the bike experience.
Yeah.
The combination is very unique.
It
Not
is.
a lot of people have that amount of experience in both areas and can like unify it. So I'm a trainer. I'm a strength trainer for cyclists. I'm a personal trainer for cyclists. Like that is when you cut through it all what I do. And I've realized that not training people in person, you start losing a little bit of that sharpness. some of the queuing,
Mhm.
just knowing what people need.
Yeah.
It's harder to remember. When you're working with people in person, everything is quick.
Yeah.
You know cues. You know that this piece of equipment's not by this piece of equipment, so you won't pair those exercises. You just know how to write good programs.
Mhm.
And I kind of missed that in the community. So I was like, all right, if I get this place back, I got to start training people in person
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
So the renovation's almost done. What's
That's
dope
awesome.
about being in the same spot is that I had 4 years of training in there, looking around, being like, dang, I would have done this differently. I would have done
That's
that
awesome.
differently.
So-
So every one of those things
Yeah.
I changed, and it is sick.
That is awesome,
It is
man.
So
sick.
will there be in the future some one-on-one training?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna do all small group, unless like a one-off athlete comes through, which has already happened a little bit.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm gonna get people back in, and it's gonna be a limited capacity because my focus is still growing the online platform, and we have some integrations and some exciting stuff about the future of that.
Nice.
But yeah, the future of Dialed Health is training people in person part time and pouring everything else into the online platform.
Yeah.
Where can people that are listening to this find out? I'm imagining about just going to your IG or your website, where if they're curious about signing up and taking your online programs.
Yeah, dialedhealth.com, DIALED health.com. is where you would go to access all of that. All
Yeah.
the information's there. And it's got links to my newsletter. My Instagram is where I'm the most active and where I have the largest following. I have a podcast and a YouTube channel.
Yep.
So all those links are in there. And you can fill out the program questionnaire, and it'll actually go to my inbox, and I'll shoot you back a recommendation. So
And
there you go.
and before we end, because this is like come kind of crazy, we didn't even really get into like the deep stuff of the double Everest. But for the people that are listening,
We're gonna bring you back. I hope you know, man. I'm sorry. I hate that we're even.
I appreciate
not
that.
going
Thanks,
in.
man. Yeah, thanks.
give us the details of where the double Everest was at and the distance and the time. Just a quick little recap on that and what year you did that.
2022, it was the whole idea of Everesting on a bike is that you go up and down the same hill until you climb the equivalent of Mount Everest, which is 29,032 feet vertical. For perspective, as you mentioned, a big ride normally would be like 7,000 feet of climbing. If you ride around in the foothills, do 40 miles, you might get 2,000 or 3,000 feet. That's pretty normal. So you have to go out of your way to do a normal Everest. And you're going up and down the same hill, which gets pretty mundane. So I had done one of those. I did one on the mountain bike. I basically realized I was like, okay, I wanted something. And this is peak that energy I was
Yep.
talking about.
Oh yeah.
And so in my head, I'm like, what is the gnarliest thing that I could do? Me personally, with my skill set and like experience and physical capabilities, what's the gnarliest thing I can do? And I don't know exactly why I had the time frame of 24 hours in my head.
Uh-huh.
I think part of it was because I know bike packers who do all these multi-day epics, and I'm like, I'm not bringing sleeping
Yeah.
bag. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
It's like 24 hours. I was like, I can go through one night of not sleeping. I was like, what's the gnarliest thing I could do that actually is good marketing for my business? And so I came up with a double Everest because I was like, I know I can do one. I was like, I might be able to do two in 24 hours, but I got to do it on the sickest road that I know of, which is Deer Creek in Malibu, which is, it's about, I think it's 1.3 miles. Actually, I'm slipping on the mileage. We could probably do the calculation. It's like, I think it's 1.3K in climbing. So I had to do
Okay.
like 46 laps or something up and down
Wow.
it. The thing is, there's like 17% grades. It's cliffside. It's kind of like the smoke spot in Malibu
Yeah.
where like kids go to the turnout
Yeah.
and like look at the sunset, whatever.
Yeah.
It's got no street lights, very scenic. Actually, the first time I descended it, my stomach kind of dropped because you hit 50 miles an hour and you're looking straight at the ocean, and then it just turns. And until you do that turn, it's like being on a roller coaster because you feel like you're just going to fly into the water.
My
And so
goodness.
basically, I was like, all right, we're doing it here. It's like the most dangerous road. And I'm
and you're
going
going to need to do it for 24 hours straight.
But it took me 27. Yeah, so I didn't hit the 24-hour goal. And what's weird about that, this is where the accountability comes from and something that's been great. Dude, when I decided I was going to do it,
Uh-huh.
for 2 months, I got on my social media and I was like, on this day at this time, I'm double Everesting. And I didn't tell people where because I didn't want to like
Yeah.
mess that part up.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't want to mess
Yeah,
that
yeah.
part up. But I called it out with that energy, right?
Dang.
Like I'm doing this. And I had people like no. And I'm
Mhm.
like, yes.
Yeah.
And so basically started the ride at 9:30 in the morning. I can't remember exactly what day it was. We didn't have cell service, so it was weird because I started it and announced it, and then it was just quiet for 24 hours.
Wow.
And people were like refreshing their Strava, and then boom, dude, they saw a ride that was 200 miles and 60,000 feet of climbing.
Listen, the people who are listening to this, do yourself a favor and go watch the video of his double Everest on YouTube, man. I'm telling you, I messaged you after it. I had the best lift I've ever had. After watching that in the gym, I'm like,
That
I
was
got to
great.
get after it. It was incredible, man. Do
Thanks,
yourself
man.
a favor and go check that out. And I told you one of the things I really keyed on was how special it is to do an amazing feat like that and have your dad there
Yeah.
taking care of you the whole time, keeping you on point.
Yep.
That I really keyed on that. How special is that, man?
Dude, he was feeding me.
He was,
You know,
man.
he was like massaging my shoulders,
Yeah.
you know, and it was insanely special. Yeah, very grateful to have a relationship with my dad like that. But there's a lot of people that was like their favorite part with my dad in the
it was
story
mine,
because
man.
like
Yeah.
he just said things, he just did
Yes.
things like I think having my sons get older and there's things that you do for them.
Yeah,
There's like a care that a father does with a son that no one else will do.
exactly.
And like he did those things throughout that day.
Yeah.
And he also did it while he was terrified. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a scene where I had a buddy actually reminding me of it where I start dropping in and I'm delirious.
Yeah.
And I'm going into this and he's just like, slow down. Like he's like kind of freaking
Yeah,
out too.
exactly.
And yeah, it was without a doubt the hardest thing I've ever done by choice.
Yeah.
Obviously this accident's
Of
been more
course.
difficult, but the most intense 24 hours I've absolutely ever had. And what was funny was that I hit 50,000 feet at the 24-hour mark, and I was so smoked and so far past. Like, to give people an idea, my riding volume leading up to that for years was like 9-10 hours a week, maybe. And I was basically almost
God.
tripling my weekly total in one day.
In one day.
And not only that, but on a climb. So the
Oh,
muscle
my
breakdown
goodness.
is so much higher. And so my body, I don't know how I didn't get rhabdo or some crazy
Seriously,
injury
right.
from it. I honestly just really believe it's a testament to the consistent strength training. And that 50,000 foot mark, I'll be real with you guys. If I wasn't being the dude I was talking it up
Yep.
for so long, and if I didn't have this many people following along, I would have for sure been like, listen, that was what I could do in 24 hours.
Yeah.
But I was like, I cannot post a video of myself saying that I quit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that last 8,000 feet was the most excruciating. I got to the point
Oh, my
where I started having to, the most intense thing that I did mentally to finish this ride was that I started telling myself that I would never see my wife and kids again unless I finish this ride.
Oh my goodness.
I started coming up with stories saying like the only way you're ever going to see your family again is if you finish this. And I started like kind of believing it and just started getting into that mode of like true life or death.
Warrior mentality.
And it got so bad and I
Wow.
pushed so far over. There was one time I'm on like a 15% grade doing like a 60 cadence, which is just excruciating. And I'm paperboying now up the route where you're crisscrossing up the road because it's too steep for you to climb
Yeah,
straight
yeah.
up. And I'm just whimpering like a dog, dude. Like I'm not crying. I don't think I had the energy to cry, but I was literally just like like that for like hours. It was just like
Bro, I wish
gnarly.
I,
It was
I
brutal.
You are a
wish
beast,
that
man.
I wish that there's some people, Rene being one of them, like you've never clipped onto a bike, right? I wish that some people could just when I do like when I'm like doing like a 10% grade, it's extremely difficult.
It's hard. Yeah.
I cannot believe that, man. So
Incredible, man.
insane.
Thanks.
Incredibly.
Thanks. Well, now I feel like I'm bragging, but I
no.
appreciate you guys letting me just like even talk about what happened. 'Cause it
No,
was,
man. I wanted to hear that.
I don't want to do that again. I really, talk about.
Let me give
Yeah.
you your flowers real quick before we wrap up. With all that you have going on, I think that it's just a testament to your character and who you are. You're a man of faith, but like, thank you for coming on. And, I reached out to you. You were super just like, man, I'm honored. And I'm like, dude, like Rene will share with you, man, like there's a lot of people that look up to you and gain inspiration from you. And it just like, it speaks volumes to who you are as a human being, man. So we super appreciate you for coming here.
Thanks.
Seriously,
means
man.
a lot. It's like been the biggest ego boost I've had.
I love
in
it,
a year.
man.
I'm back.
I
Dude. Turn on
love
the Lil
it.
Wayne.
You are.
Let's go. I was kidding.
We finish everyone with the last question. What does legacy mean to you, man?
I thought about this a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I've seen the show.
Yeah.
I really. Did you guys hear the Mike Tyson quote recently about legacy?
Oh, I did. I did.
Yeah.
He said like it's stupid or like doesn't mean shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because I think I go back and forth with whether or not I think it's important, because when I think about people from, who do you remember from a couple thousand years ago? Jesus? I'm saying no one's going to be Jesus. So, and there are more people, and it doesn't have to be that extreme. It's probably being a perfectionist. But I honestly think legacy for me is starting at home.
Yes.
And being a man my boys can look up to, that they're proud of, that they remember, and that hopefully their kids can do the same. And if I could have my grandkids look up to me in any way, shape, or form, that's a great legacy for me.
That is a great answer, man. Derek,
Thanks, man.
thank you for being in the lounge, man. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We out.